Hello, and we're back today with another episode of Craft Club from Home. Today we're going to be focusing on making a soft fabric brooch, which is a great project to add all sorts of creativity and your own personal flair to. You can make it with easily found objects from around the house, including recycled material and bottle cap lids and jar lids and things like that. This project doesn't require a sewing machine, and I'm going to focus on showing you some cool little hand sewing tricks. Here are the tools and materials that you're going to need for your soft fabric brooch. Some fabric scissors. I've also got paper scissors for cutting out the pattern, and I've got some little tiny snips for doing fine detailed work. I have a texter and some paper for doing the pattern. Some wadding or stuffing. Now, I often get my stuffing from an old cushion that I don't want to use anymore, or you could even open up maybe a toy that you don't want to keep and remove the stuffing to use to stuff the brooch. I've got a bunch of beautiful recycled fabric scraps that match my outfit that I'm going to use for my design. If you don't have fabric scraps at home, you're welcome to use some old clothing like a t-shirt or some leggings or something that you don't wear anymore that you love the print or colour or pattern of the material. I have some nice coloured threads. I have some pins and a nice big sewing needle. I like using a big one because it's easier to use. I have a safety pin or a brooch back. So that's a brooch back, but if you can't get your hands on one of them, a big safety pin's really easy to use for backing your brooch. I have a hot glue gun. Now this isn't necessary. If you don't have one, you can just use your needle and thread to do the stitching. And just remember, if you're going to use a hot glue gun, make sure you get an adult or helper to help with that. And lastly, I have been collecting a few cool coloured jar lids and bottle cap lids that I'm going to add texture and height and decoration to my fabric brooch. With my pen and paper, I'm going to draw my design and make the pattern for my soft fabric brooch. You can do any design you want, a star, a heart, a face shape, a person, an alien, anything you want. So you just draw that on your piece of paper and then add a little bit of seam allowance to allow for turning it inside out or stitching, and then you cut it out of your paper and you've got your pattern. So here's my flower pattern I've just drawn. I'm choosing a flower to match my outfit. I'm going to cut it out with my paper scissors. I've selected this nice thick stretchy orange fabric that's going to be my base for the brooch. So I've got two scraps that I'm going to put together, and then I'll place my pattern on top of the fabric. I'm going to pin the fabric on, and then I'm going to cut around my pattern. So next I'm going to carefully remove the pins from my fabric, take off the pattern, and I'll be ready to start hand sewing around my brooch. I'll load up my hand sewing needle with some matching thread, and we're ready to get started on the sewing. So I've stitched around the edge of my flower, just using a whip stitch where I'm going in and out. Now, when I've come back and I've left about 3 centimeters space unstitched so that I can stuff my brooch or turn it inside out if that's the design you're choosing. So I've come all the way back, and I'm just going to show you how I'm going to tie off my hand stitching to finish it. So I've come around, go one final stitch, pull it until I have a small loop, and then I'm going to go 1, 2, and pull it really tight, and that's going to lock it off in a nice knot. I'm going to snip the tail, and now I've chosen to turn mine inside out so I don't have the stitching on the outside, so I'm going to do that next. And then it's time to stuff your soft brooch with the wadding. So let's see how this looks when it's turned inside out. Through. Now I'm going to use my paper scissors that have a nice blunt end, and I'm just going to gently poke my petals outwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And roll them around. Get that one. There we go. So here we go. Here's my flower. It's a bit floppy, but now we're going to stuff it through the little opening. So I'm going to take my stuffing and I'm going to gently pat out the flower. So I'm just going to take little bits and sort of concentrate on stuffing one petal at a time until it's nice and plump but not too overstuffed, so it's still nice and soft and will be nice to wear. I'm just tearing it as I go to make it a bit easier to stuff inside my flower. It's really coming to life, which is exciting. All right, well, that's looking good. So now the next step, I'm going to move it all around and get it nice and puffy. So the next step will be to sew up the stuffing hole. So this is the base ready to be stitched up. So what I'm going to do is fold, because I've turned it inside out, I'm going to fold these 2 pieces of fabric in on themselves, pop a little pin in there, and then I'm going to stitch it up, and then your base is ready to decorate. So this is sort of just the base, and this is when the fun begins. So next I'm going to show you how to do some frills. some hand stitched frills, and I'm going to start decorating my flower. So my flower's ready to be decorated now. My plan is to make some beautiful frills that I'm going to add around the outside, and I'm also going to put frills in the middle, and I'm going to do a few petals out of different colored fabrics. And I have chosen this beautiful scrap of hot pink fabric. It's nice and thin, that I'm going to cut some long strips out of. And then I'm going to show you how to make a simple hand sewn frill. So I'm just going to get my long piece of fabric, and you can do this with any kind of fabric. Next, I've got my quite long sewing needle, and I've tied quite a big knot on the end by just continuously tying knots to create a nice big knot so it won't pull through the fabric. And next, all I'm going to do is pop it in, start the sewing, and then I'm going to go in and out at sort of 1 centimeter or half a centimeter spaces. And what that's going to do is create the gathering. Sometimes it helps to put it on a flat surface, and then you can just stab your needle in and out, and then you just keep going all the way to the end of the fabric. And then when you get to the end of the fabric, you pull it, and it's going to create a beautiful frill. Alright, so I'm just working along my piece of fabric. I'm just going in and out, picking up a little bit of the fabric as I go until I get to the end. Now I've got enough on my needle, I'm going to pull it along, and you can see how I'm getting my nice even stitches here. So I'm nearly at the end, and then that's the fun bit when I get to gather my beautiful little frill. So now I'm at the end. What I'm going to do is gently pull my fabric, and as you can see, it's creating a beautiful little puff. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to join the ends together, and then you've got a cute little frill that's going to become the center of my flower. So join that together, and then I'll do the same trick as finishing the flower through the loop, tie it off, spread out the frill, and here's your little frill ready to go. So I'm ready to decorate my soft fabric flower. I cut out some petals out of this cool shiny fabric. So that's going to lie on top of my soft fabric brooch. And then I'll add my little frilly flowers to the top. And then I think I'm going to add this bottle cap as the center of the flower. And then maybe I'll add some more decorations on top of that. And finally, I'm going to add this frill all around the edge to make it really big and fabulous. Now you can, if you don't have a hot glue gun, you can hand sew all your decorations on and just keep going with your hand sewing techniques. Otherwise, you can use your hot glue gun and make sure you're supervised by an adult or helper. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use my hot glue gun to start decorating my soft fabric flower. All right, really happy with how this is turning out so far. So the final step is I'm going to put my bottle cap center on, stitch it on. So what I've done is I've threaded this large sewing needle with double thread, so it's 4 threads in total, so it's nice and strong. And you might want to get an adult or older helper to help you poke a hole through the middle of the bottle cap if you're going to use one for any sort of decoration. But the plastic's nice and soft and easy to stitch through. And I'm actually going to use it, I'm going to sew it on with the decorative stitch. So I'm going to go through the back, up through the middle, and then I'm going to stitch it on. All right, so the center's sewn on, and now I'm going to do the final step, which is attaching the safety pin or brooch back. I'm going to use a safety pin. If you wanted to, you can glue a little piece of ribbon over the safety pin to have it nice and secure, but I'm going to use another double strong thread, and I'm just going to hand sew it onto the back of my soft brooch. So I'm just going to do a couple of nice strong stitches moving along the back to make sure it's nice and secure. And I'm actually doing a blanket stitch where I go through the last loop of what I've stitched. So you pick it up and then I go back through that loop, and then that creates a nice secure stitch to hold your safety pin in place. And at the end I'm going to double up my stitching, make sure it's nice and strong, pulling it really tight. It's really fun sewing into the stuffed fabric. So I hope you have lots of fun creating your very own super creative soft fabric brooch. It's a really fun project to make as a gift for a friend or someone special. And now I'm going to put it on. And I'm really happy with it. Thanks everyone for joining me today for this craft club. Can't wait to see what you make, and I hope you have heaps of fun making your own creative soft fabric brooches.